And Emily's going to tell us her views on Jewish schools and synagogues needing more security in the UK due to the threat of anti-Semitic attacks. It's time for the Carver Palaver.
Yes. Now, I remember when my parents used to take me to school and we'd pass a Jewish school. The school was surrounded by high brick walls, fences, and security guards were standing at the front gates. I remember asking why that was. We didn't have that at my school. Now, that was about 15, 20 years ago. Fast forward to now, 2023, and this week, we've all been reminded why Jewish schools and places of worship feel they need this level of security. Since Israel suffered its worst terrorist attack in decades, thousands of Jewish children across the UK, Europe, the US, Canada have been forced to stay home from school due to calls for a global pogrom. Other pupils were told to disguise their uniforms. Students on university campuses have felt under attack. They felt unsafe. Only 80 years on from the Holocaust. Jewish shops have been vandalised, and in the UK alone, there has been a 400% increase in anti-Semitic incidences. We should all feel devastated by the fact that Jewish people in this country and across the West don't feel safe to show their religious identity on our streets. The likes of Sadiq Khan say diversity is our greatest strength. But isn't what we're seeing evidence clear as day that multiculturalism is unfortunately failing among some communities? Watching the pro-Palestine rallies today, it's not difficult to see why Jews feel fearful. Amongst the crowds spotted were men calling for the armies of Muhammad to attack Jews. Jeremy Corbyn was found apparently mourning the loss of innocent lives, Israeli and Palestinian. But can you spot an Israeli flag in the crowds? I can't. There were those joining the protests today who had pictures of paragliders on their backs. Could these be the paragliders that Hamas sent terrorists in on to massacre civilians at a peaceful rave in Israel? There we go, two women there with paragliders on their backs. The chant "From the river to the sea" could also be heard on Regent Street in London, a chant widely understood to be calling for the destruction of Israel and the Jewish people. We should not accept this. This is not the Britain I love or want to live in. I implore all good people of this great country to stand firmly against this and support Jewish people's right to feel safe in this country and across the world. Right, well, a bit emotional there, because I think this whole week a lot of us have been feeling, well, quite emotional, because we've heard testimony from Jewish people, from Jewish children, from Jewish students who genuinely feel unsafe, Darren.
Absolutely. And look, Emily, I'm just going to say it. I think actually if you are someone who is glorifying the actions of terrorists, if you are saying that actually it's a laudable thing, from the river to the sea, that is calling for the eradication of Jewish people, extermination even, from the entire place that is called Israel and has been for 75 years. That to me is incitement. It's to actually glorify Hamas, which is a prescribed terrorist organisation in Britain. Let's not forget, the BBC might want to forget that, but I certainly don't. And I actually do worry that we have allowed a load of people into this country who do not share our views and our values, and that breaks my heart to see. To see thousands of people line up today in London to actually glorify these actions, I think is wrong, dangerous and disgusting, frankly, and they shouldn't be here. If they want to do that sort of thing, go elsewhere. Get to Gaza. I'll help you. I'll chip in, because I tell you what, it won't be anything quite as relaxed and laid back as we are here, unfortunately, in Britain.
Yeah, and I know from speaking to Jewish friends, Benjamin, that there is a fear of wearing, well, symbols of their faith in some areas of London. How can that be? And in other cities, I'm sure.
I mean, I spent Monday and Tuesday talking to Jewish people in North London for the newspaper I write for, and it was really, really upsetting. You know, I spoke to Josh Howie, who is a presenter on Headliners here, and he has 5 kids. They're a Jewish family. And he said that he told his kids not to wear their school uniform on the bus because it has Hebrew writing on it. And I said, how do you explain to primary school age kids that they can't show their identity. And he said, I had to tell my little kids that people hate them just because of who they are. And I mean, that is a real reflection of the situation. I was in Golders Green and I rang up and said, would it be possible to speak to the rabbi? And they said, you have to go through security checks before you can meet him. Now, you've never had that with a vicar, for example. You could just walk into a church. But that's how seriously they have to take their security. And I think that if one thing that's been highlighted in this week, it's obviously got significantly worse, but I think a lot of people really didn't understand or respect the reality that a lot of Jewish people feel and have felt for generations. There's a woman called Lily Abert, who's a Holocaust survivor, who wrote a best-selling book with her great-grandson, Dov Foreman. And I spoke to Dov, and he said that they've had to increase the security at their Holocaust survivor great-grandmother's home because they're so worried about the death threats they've had in the thousands of abusive messages on the internet.
Now, Alex, sometimes we see this almost dismissed. You know, when Jewish people are saying that these kind of attacks or incidents are on the rise and they feel fearful, people say, oh, well, other communities feel fearful too. I mean, I tweeted in support of, well, essentially Jewish people feeling safe in this country and worrying about anti-Semitic attacks. And I get, what about Palestinian lives? I wasn't commenting on the conflict. I wasn't making any political point besides the fact that I worry for Jewish people in this country and I want them to feel safe here. Why does everything have to be, you know, made into something else?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shocking state of affairs in this country at the moment, isn't it? That anyone of any community can't feel safe. And it's often the communities that are most persecuted over in history, such as the Jewish ones, that have that vitriol aimed at them. And what really disgusts me is the targeting of children in schools and religious and buildings of religious faith. You know, that's not the values of this country. We are tolerant people, and we have welcomed people from all places from across the world, all religions, all beliefs, all races. And this experiment of multiculturalism seems to be getting to a peak where there is more violence and more hatred towards each other than there ever has been before.
No,
I don't remember this being like this when I was growing up in the 2000s and the 90s.
The Windrush generation might have something to say.
Let me just bring Albie in on this point, because yes, people have said that this is an example, seeing these pro-Palestinian rallies that have, you know, involved anti-Semitic chanting, unfortunately, is a sign that multiculturalism actually is failing in a way.
I don't accept that at all, actually. Look, we live in a multicultural society in this country. Some communities have done better at integrating than other communities. If we look at the Jewish community, that is a different culture to the Christian community. I would argue that is an example of where multiculturalism has succeeded. So I disagree when people say in the strongest possible... Well, no, because... Accept all
British values and norms on the whole, the vast majority. But there will be
British Muslims who will accept British values, and I know many of them. So I think the idea to say that multiculturalism has failed in absolute terms is something I disagree with on the strongest possible terms. Now, on the issue which we are talking about, which is how Jewish people are feeling in Britain today, I'm very concerned about how they're feeling in Britain today. I think it's terrible that actions which are happening hundreds, if not thousands of miles away in the Middle East are having an impact on how British people are living their lives. Alex, you spoke about tolerance being a British value. We also have to be tolerant, then, of people who want to talk about the plight of Gaza. That might be an unpopular point of view, but that is a point of view that people have.
But the plight of Hamas is not the plight of Palestine.
I said Palestine, not Hamas. Yeah. It's perfectly reasonable for people to peacefully protest in favour of the Palestinians' plight.
Well, hang on. Yes, I totally accept that. But let's cast our mind back. Before Israel had even spoken of any sort of retaliation, there were people out on the streets celebrating, unfortunately, in this country. And I think that is a sign that some communities are not integrating. What we do about that is a massive question that we won't solve now.